He knew. They did not listen. A month later, the ocean was on fire. He brought a document that could have stopped the tragedy. They showed him the door. He lived on the edge, between MI6 and the Abwehr, between lies and betrayal. He drank champagne with millionaires, slept with the most desired women in Europe, and wrote reports the same night. This is not a movie character. This was a real man. And he was the one who inspired the creation of James Bond. But what he went through in real life was more dangerous, more corrupt, and more terrifying than any novel. Stay until the end, because what comes next is something no Bond film ever dared to show. Dubrovnik, 1913. A wealthy Yugoslav family welcomes a son who will one day hold the fate of nations in his hands. But Duško Popov doesn't know this yet. He's just a boy with an unusual gift for languages and an even more unusual appetite for risk. His family sends him to the finest schools across Europe. England teaches him refinement. France gives him culture. Germany gives him something else entirely. In the university halls of Freiburg, he meets Johann Jebsen. A friendship forms. A friendship that will either save millions of lives or destroy them both. But here's what's unsettling about this period. Popov witnesses something in Germany that changes everything. The rising tide of hatred, the casual cruelty becoming normal, the way ordinary people begin to look away from their neighbors. He sees what's coming, and he makes a choice that will define the rest of his life. He decides to fight back, not with weapons, but with something far more dangerous. The truth, carefully wrapped in lies. 1939. The world explodes into war, and Johann Jebsen makes an offer that sounds like a death sentence. Come work for German intelligence. Become a spy for the Reich. Most people would run. Popov says yes, but there's a twist the Germans don't see coming. The moment Popov accepts their offer, he walks into the British embassy in Belgrade. He doesn't just want to spy for Britain. He wants to spy on the spies spying on him. The British intelligence officer looks at this young Yugoslav with his expensive clothes and easy smile. This man wants to become a double agent. This charming playboy wants to deceive the most paranoid intelligence apparatus in Europe. They give him a code name, Tricycle. Whether it's because he liked to gamble with 3 cards, or because he juggled 3 different identities, nobody will say. But the name fits. Everything about Duško Popov comes in threes. 3 languages, 3 loyalties, 3 ways to die if anyone discovers the truth. Lisbon becomes the chessboard where Europe's spies play their deadliest game. Neutral Portugal, but nothing here is truly neutral. Every cafe holds secrets. Every hotel room might be bugged. Every smile might be a trap. Popov arrives with his German credentials and his British soul. His controller, von Karsthoff, trusts him completely. Why wouldn't he? Here's a Yugoslav businessman, perfectly positioned to build networks across occupied Europe. Here's a man who seems to deliver exactly what the Abwehr needs. But in the shadows, British intelligence feeds Popov a steady stream of carefully crafted lies. Not obvious lies, subtle ones. Half-truths that feel completely believable. Information that helps Germany just enough to maintain trust, but never enough to actually win. Then something happens that reminds everyone how dangerous this game really is. Popov's driver, a man who knew too much about too many secrets, turns up with a bullet in his head. No investigation, no questions. Just a reminder that in this war, knowledge kills. The Blitz is tearing London apart when Popov arrives in 1941. Buildings crumble. Families hide in underground stations. The city burns nightly, but somehow, impossibly, it refuses to surrender. Popov walks into this chaos and finds his true calling. Tar Robertson and the Double Cross Committee don't just want another spy. They want an artist, someone who can paint lies so beautiful that even the most suspicious German intelligence officer will hang them on the wall. They teach him everything. Invisible ink that appears only under specific conditions. Dead drops that look like accident. Code words hidden in love letters. But most importantly, they teach him how to live as someone else without losing himself entirely. And it's here, in the exclusive clubs and expensive restaurants of wartime London, that Popov's legend truly begins. He doesn't just gather intelligence, he becomes intelligence. Every party he attends, every woman he charms, every hand of cards he plays becomes part of his cover. Ian Fleming watches him at the baccarat table one night. This Yugoslav stranger with his perfect English and his dangerous smile, betting amounts that would bankrupt ordinary men. Fleming doesn't know it yet, but he's watching the birth of James Bond. 1941 brings Popov his most important mission yet. The Abwehr wants him in America. They have questions about American defenses. Specific questions. Detailed questions. Hidden in a microdot smaller than a period on this page, Popov carries a list that would chill anyone who truly understood its meaning. How many ships are stationed at Pearl Harbor? What are the exact coordinates of the fuel depots? How many aircraft can the base support? When British intelligence sees these questions, they know immediately what's being planned. They send Popov to America not just as a spy, but as a messenger carrying the most important warning in American history. But J. Edgar Hoover doesn't want to hear it. The FBI director looks at this foreign playboy with his expensive suits and his outrageous stories about German invasion plans. Hoover sees a con man, not a prophet. Months later, on December 7th, 1941, Popov listens to the radio reports from Pearl Harbor. Every ship that burns, every life that ends, every strategic advantage that dies in the smoke and fire, all of it was preventable. All of it was predicted. All of it was ignored. While America reels from Pearl Harbor, Popov discovers something that won't be fully understood for years. In his travels through Brazil and the United States, he keeps hearing whispers about uranium. Both German and American scientists are asking the same questions about the same rare metal. He doesn't know about the Manhattan Project. He doesn't know about German atomic research, but he knows that both sides are racing towards something that could change the nature of war itself. The intelligence he gathers during this period remains classified decades later. What did he learn? What did he report? How much did his warnings influence the Allied decision to accelerate their own nuclear program? Some secrets stay buried even after the war ends. Some truths are too dangerous to tell, even to historians. 1944. The Allies are planning the largest invasion in human history. But first, they need to sell the greatest lie ever told. They need to convince the Germans that the invasion will come at Calais, not Normandy. They need to make the enemy look in the wrong direction at the most crucial moment in the war. Popov becomes the star of Operation Fortitude. Every report he sends to the Abwehr builds the false narrative. Fake troop movements, imaginary divisions, phantom armies that exist only in German minds. But this isn't just about moving toy soldiers on a map. This is about reading the psychology of the enemy. What will they believe? What do they want to believe? How do you feed someone a lie so perfectly crafted that they'll defend it against the truth? The complexity of this deception is staggering. Popov doesn't just report fake information, he creates an entire alternate reality. He describes conversations with fictional officers. He sketches maps of imaginary fortifications. He invents supply problems that don't exist and training exercises that never happened. Every detail must be perfect. One inconsistency, one impossible timeline, one character who doesn't quite fit, and the entire operation collapses. The Germans have their own intelligence networks. They cross-reference everything. They verify what they can and question what they can't. Popov feeds them information that matches their expectations, while slowly reshaping those expectations. He confirms their assumptions about Allied capabilities, while subtly redirecting their attention. He makes them feel smart for figuring out things he wants them to figure out. The psychological warfare goes deeper than simple misdirection. Popov studies German military doctrine, their decision-making patterns, their cultural biases. He knows that German commanders trust engineering over intuition. They believe in overwhelming force applied at the strongest point. They expect their enemies to think like they do. So Popov gives them an enemy that thinks exactly like they do. He describes Allied preparations for the kind of invasion the Germans would plan. Massive, direct, brutal. Everything focused on the shortest route to victory. Everything aimed at Calais, where the channel is narrowest and the defenses are strongest. The Germans intercept Allied communications that confirm everything Popov has been telling them. They don't realize that these communications are fake, designed specifically to be intercepted. They see proof, not performance. Meanwhile, the real preparations continue in secrecy. Normandy beaches are studied, landing craft are assembled, airborne divisions train for drops behind enemy lines. The actual invasion force grows stronger every day, while the Phantom Army capturing German attention grows more elaborate and more believable. When D-Day finally comes, German forces are scattered across the wrong beaches, staring at the wrong horizon, waiting for an invasion that will never come. Popov's lies have become more powerful than entire armies. His fictional divisions have tied down real German reserves. His imaginary threat has neutralized actual defensive capabilities. But even after the Normandy landings begin, the deception continues. Popov helps convince the Germans that this is just a diversion. The real invasion, the main attack, is still coming at Calais. German reinforcements that could have crushed the beachheads remain in place, waiting for phantom armies that will never arrive. The success of D-Day depends on many factors: superior planning, brave soldiers, technological advantages, tactical surprise. But underneath it all, holding the entire operation together, is the web of lies spun by agents like Popov. Truth wins wars, but sometimes truth needs lies to protect it. Johann Jebsen, the friend who started it all, makes a mistake that costs him everything. The Gestapo captures him in Lisbon. They know he's been playing a double game, but they don't know how deep it goes. The arrest happens in broad daylight. Jebsen is walking down a busy street when unmarked cars surround him. No dramatic chase, no gunfight, just the quiet efficiency of a machine designed to make people disappear. Witnesses later describe the scene as eerily calm. Jebsen doesn't resist. He doesn't call for help. He seems to understand that this moment was always inevitable. Popov learns about the capture through British intelligence channels. The news hits him like a physical blow. Jebsen isn't just his oldest friend. He's the only person who knows every detail of Popov's double life. Every operation, every contact, every lie told to both sides over the past 5 years. The question becomes, what will Jebsen reveal under interrogation? The Gestapo has methods that break even the strongest minds. They have time, resources, and absolutely no moral limitations. They can keep a person alive and conscious through pain that would normally cause unconsciousness or termination. Popov waits for news. Days pass. Weeks. The silence becomes deafening. Every knock at the door could be his last. Every phone call could be a trap. Every meeting could be an ambush. He lives in a state of constant readiness for betrayal, knowing that his closest friend might be the one forced to deliver it. British intelligence offers to extract him immediately. They can have him out of Europe within hours. New identity, new life, complete protection. But Popov refuses. Walking away now would confirm German suspicions about Jebsen. It would validate everything they might torture out of him. Instead, Popov does something that requires either extraordinary courage or complete madness. He continues his mission exactly as before. He meets with his German contacts. He delivers intelligence reports. He maintains the same casual, confident demeanor that has protected him for years. The psychological strain is enormous. He's performing normalcy while knowing that every conversation might be his last. He's projecting confidence while calculating escape routes. He's building trust while preparing for betrayal. Weeks turn into months. The silence from Germany becomes more ominous with each passing day. No news about Jebsen. No changes in German intelligence procedures. No indication that Popov's network has been compromised, but also no confirmation that his friend is still alive. Finally, word comes from Germany. Jebsen died while attempting to escape. The quotation marks say everything. Everyone understands what this means. Everyone knows what really happened. But nobody can prove it, and nobody will investigate. The official report describes a routine prisoner transfer. Jebsen allegedly overpowered a guard and ran toward the perimeter fence. He was shot trying to climb over. The body was disposed of according to standard procedures. No further details are available. But survivors later tell a different story. They describe a man who never broke, even under the worst conditions. A man who gave the Gestapo nothing useful, despite months of interrogation. A man who protected his friends by sacrificing himself, piece by piece, day by day. Did Jebsen reveal Popov's secrets before the end? Did he die protecting the man who had become his enemy and his friend? The uncertainty eats at Popov in ways that enemy bullets never could. He's lost more than a friend. He's lost the one person who understood the impossible balance he'd been maintaining for years. The one person who knew that beneath the lies and the deception, Duško Popov was still human. The one person who shared the weight of living multiple lives simultaneously. The guilt becomes a permanent companion. Every success after Jebsen's disappearance feels tainted. Every German officer who trusts Popov's information is trusting the credibility that Jebsen's silence purchased. Every Allied victory enabled by Popov's deception is built on his friend's sacrifice. But perhaps most painfully, Popov realizes that he can never publicly honor Jebsen's memory. The nature of their work means that heroism remains hidden, sacrifice goes unrecognized, and friendship becomes just another casualty of war. History will remember the battles and the generals, but the quiet courage of men like Jebsen will disappear into classified files and sealed records. The war ends, but for Popov, one mission remains. Wearing a British uniform, he searches through defeated Germany for Walter Süsser, the man who ran the camp where Jebsen met his end. When he finds him, Popov has a choice that will define the rest of his life. Justice or revenge, law or personal satisfaction. The gun in his hand, or the principles he's fought to defend. He stares into the eyes of the man who likely gave the order for his friend's execution, the man who represents everything Popov has been fighting against. The trigger waits for his finger, but Popov walks away. Not because he's weak, but because he's strong enough to remain human after everything he's endured. Some victories are won not by pulling the trigger, but by choosing not to. Years later, when Ian Fleming publishes his first James Bond novel, he never admits the connection. But the resemblance is impossible to ignore. The casino scenes, the charm, the ability to deceive enemies while seducing allies, the way danger becomes just another accessory, like a perfectly tied bow tie. The parallels run deeper than surface similarities. Both men understand that style is a weapon. Both know that being underestimated is an advantage. Both recognize that the most dangerous enemies are often the most charming ones. Fleming observed Popov during those wartime encounters in London's exclusive clubs. He watched how this mysterious Yugoslav could command attention without seeming to try. How he could extract information while appearing to give it away. How he could make people want to trust him, even when their instincts warned against it. But Fleming also saw something else. The cost of living multiple lives. The exhaustion that comes from never being able to fully relax. The way Popov's eyes would sometimes drift during conversations, as if he were calculating odds and escape routes, even during casual social interactions. The fictional James Bond gets to be purely heroic. He fights clear enemies for obvious causes. His loyalties are simple, his mission straightforward. He can kill without moral complexity and love without emotional consequences. The real Dusko Popov lived in a world of grays. Every relationship was potentially temporary. Every loyalty had to be balanced against other loyalties. Every truth had to be weighed against multiple lies. Every victory came with a cost that civilians could never fully understand. Fleming's genius was understanding that readers wanted the excitement of espionage without the psychological complexity of actual intelligence work. They wanted the glamour without the guilt, the danger without the doubt, the heroism without the moral ambiguity. Popov receives the Order of the British Empire for his service, but his real achievements remain classified for decades. The public doesn't know that this charming businessman helped win the war. They don't know that his lies saved more lives than most armies. They don't know that his psychological warfare was as effective as any military campaign. The official citation is deliberately vague. For services to His Majesty's government during the war. No details about what those services were. No explanation of how they were performed. No recognition of the specific ways he changed the course of history. This anonymity is intentional. Double agents can never be fully celebrated because their methods must remain secret. Their techniques can't be publicly analyzed because future operations might depend on similar deceptions. Their sacrifices can't be properly honored because the nature of their work contradicts conventional ideas about heroism. He returns to his life of luxury, but something has changed. The thrill of deception has lost its appeal. The game that once energized him now feels empty. He spent so many years being other people that finding himself again becomes its own kind of challenge. Peacetime brings unexpected difficulties. The skills that kept him alive during the war become liabilities in civilian life. The ability to lie convincingly, to manipulate trust, to live with constant uncertainty, these talents have no positive application in a world that values honesty and stability. Popov struggles to form genuine relationships. How do you explain to someone that you've spent years perfecting the art of deception? How do you convince them that this time, finally, you're telling the truth? How do you build trust when your greatest professional skill was destroying it? The excitement of normal life pales compared to the intensity of wartime espionage. Business meetings feel trivial after interrogations. Social problems seem insignificant after life or death decisions. The mundane challenges of civilian existence can't compete with the adrenaline of playing cat and mouse with enemy intelligence agencies. But perhaps most difficult is the isolation. Popov can never fully share his story with anyone. The details of his operations remain classified. The full extent of his contributions to the war effort can't be publicly acknowledged. He carries the weight of extraordinary experiences that must remain largely secret. The man who inspired the world's most famous fictional spy disappears into comfortable obscurity. He builds a successful business, travels extensively, enjoys the fruits of his wartime achievements. But part of him remains forever in those shadowy years, when every day brought new dangers and new opportunities to change the course of history. What makes Duško Popov's story so compelling isn't just what he did, but how he did it. He didn't win through violence or intimidation. He won through understanding his enemies well enough to predict their reactions, understanding his allies well enough to earn their trust, understanding himself well enough to survive with his soul intact. The real skill of a double agent isn't lying. It's knowing which truths to tell and when to tell them. It's building relationships so genuine that people want to believe you, even when their instincts warn them not to. It's managing multiple identities without losing track of who you really are underneath all the masks. Popov mastered this art so completely that both sides trusted him with their most sensitive secrets. The Germans believed he was their most valuable asset. The British knew he was their most effective weapon. Both were right, in their own way. But this mastery came at a price that's rarely discussed in spy stories. Living multiple lives requires a kind of psychological flexibility that most people don't possess. It means being comfortable with constant uncertainty. It means accepting that your closest relationships might be temporary or false. It means finding ways to maintain your humanity while doing things that ordinary moral frameworks can't easily accommodate. The psychological pressure is immense. Every conversation is a performance. Every relationship is strategic. Every emotion must be evaluated for its potential intelligence value. The line between authentic personality and operational necessity becomes increasingly blurred. Popov had to remember not just what he had told different people, but what persona he had been when he told them. The charming businessman who dealt with German controllers required different mannerisms than the concerned patriot who reported to British handlers. The sophisticated socialite who attended London parties needed different opinions than the practical spy who gathered intelligence in Lisbon. The mental effort required to maintain these different versions of himself was exhausting. One slip, one moment of confusion about which role he was supposed to be playing, and the entire operation could collapse. The stakes were so high that even minor mistakes could have catastrophic consequences. Yet somehow, Popov managed to keep all these threads untangled. He remembered every detail of every lie he had told to every person. He maintained the emotional connections necessary for each relationship, while never forgetting that those connections were ultimately professional tools. He projected sincerity while calculating betrayal, offered friendship while planning deception. The loneliness of this existence is difficult to imagine. True intimacy becomes impossible when every personal revelation might compromise operational security. Genuine relaxation is dangerous when letting your guard down could mean exposure. Authentic emotion becomes a luxury that could cost lives. But perhaps most remarkably, Popoff found ways to remain fundamentally decent despite the moral complexity of his work. He never let the necessity of deception turn him into a person who enjoyed causing harm. He never confused the roles he played with his actual identity. He never lost sight of the larger purpose that justified the smaller betrayals. This ethical grounding is what separates the real Duško Popoff from the fictional spies he inspired. James Bond enjoys violence and feels no guilt about manipulation. He treats people as disposable resources and relationships as temporary conveniences. He's a fantasy of power without consequence, action without moral complexity. The real Popoff lived with the consequences of every decision. He felt the weight of every deception. He mourned the friends he lost and regretted the trust he had to betray. He understood that the means he used, however necessary, had real effects on real people. This moral awareness didn't make him less effective as a spy. If anything, it made him more effective. People trusted him because underneath all the lies and manipulation, he remained fundamentally trustworthy. His basic decency showed through even his most calculating performances. The paradox of Duško Popoff is that he succeeded as a deceiver because he remained honest about what deception cost him. He survived years of moral complexity because he never stopped believing that some things were worth the compromise. He endured the loneliness of multiple identities because he never forgot who he really was beneath all the masks. The man who inspired James Bond didn't need a license to kill. He needed something far more dangerous, a license to lie with such perfection that his enemies would thank him for it. Duško Popoff proved that the most powerful weapon in any war isn't a gun or a bomb. It's the ability to make your enemy defeat themselves with their own beliefs. His story reminds us that heroes don't always wear uniforms or carry weapons. Sometimes they wear expensive suits and carry secrets. Sometimes they save the world not by fighting, but by dancing. Not by conquering, but by charming. The real James Bond didn't just exist. He was more incredible than fiction ever dared to imagine.